Hi, everybody. Welcome to my favorite shitty movie. Tonight, we've got returning guest, video game designer slash writer, Steven Skelton, and a good pal of mine. He's back. And he wants us to talk about one of his favorite shitty movies, a Roger Corman picture called Battle Beyond the Stars. And yes, I have the Blu-ray. It's very exciting. I recently had a birthday. I turned 52. I feel awful about it. And as is my tradition on my birthday, because my birthday is in January, and January, as we all know, is the month for shitty movies. It is the month where they release all the great shitty movies. Yes, there's a bunch of Oscar contenders that you can get upset about whether they got nominated or not, in the theaters as well, held over from the holidays. But that doesn't matter. This month we've had Night Swim, a PG-13 horror movie about a pool in the night. And we've had The Beekeeper, which is Jason Statham. And he has like a platonic mother-son relationship with a rape enablist Felicia Rashad, and she gets ripped off by evil scammers, and they take all her money, and then she kills herself, and then Jason Statham goes and kills all them as a result. I actually went to see that movie with my mother-in-law, who's in her 80s, and she normally does not like excessive violence, but in this case she thought it was great because she very related to the reason why the revenge was happening. And then on my birthday, because every year on my birthday, I try to go out and see two movies, the two worst movies I can find in the theaters. And on the 19th of 2024, they released two genre movies on my birthday. And so I had to go see them. One was called ISS, which is a sci-fi fantasy. We'll talk about that one way later in the show. And then the other was called Founders Day, which was sort of a slasher movie with Scream influences, whatever. I had a great time at both of these B movies. Hillary loved the space movie ISS. She did not care for Founders Day, but I was fine with it because it's a slasher movie and I don't expect that much from slasher films. And also, Hillary does not smoke weed and I do. So it makes it easier for me to enjoy shitty movies, especially when they're delivering all I want. I mean, when I go to a slasher film, all I want to see is people acting like dicks and then getting stabbed. That's it. It's no big deal. It's not hard to deliver a good slasher film, at least not for me. But for Hillary, she needs more. Anyway, before I go on too long, I need to bring on my co-host. She is a great producer. She's working on some shit that's happening overseas right now. I'm very excited about it. And I think she is too, probably because it's a job. But I'm excited to see the final product when it happens 17 years from now, because films take a long time to finish. But anyway, she's also knows everything about every movie ever made. And she's smarter than me, and she cares about the Academy Award nominations. I don't, but she does. So you should listen to her. Her name is Tracy Mercer.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Todd. And a belated happy birthday. I'm going to guess ISS is that International Space Station.
Yeah, that's what it stands for.
Oh, they're so clever. That's great.
And the great thing about that movie is the first thing they explain is what ISS stands for.
I love that.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. It's like when you go back and you watch the West Wing pilot, it was so long ago. The fact that back in the, and this was true, it wasn't just Sorkin underestimating people. No one knew what POTUS was because we didn't use that in the common vernacular. Right. So this POTUS person crashed into a tree and they're like, who's the idiot POTUS? And you're like, oh, President of the United States. And you're like, okay, everybody, very dated by today's standards, but
there's so many of those. And I remember whenever they popped up, I'd be like, wait, what's SCOTUS?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
know
Right?
what POTUS is now, but
SCOTUS?
what's
Well, I
SCOTUS?
know, right? We call it SCOTUS since it's no longer Supreme. I think I don't know. That could not be a connection, but
I
I
call it the Supreme Nazi Court of America.
well, I mean, on a good day. I don't know. I'm not a full class citizen in 21 states, so I wouldn't know. I'm not allowed to talk. I have to say, when you talk about slasher movies, I obviously have a problem collecting, and so
Mhm.
whatever. I found this thing and I was like, there's no way I can't get it because I collect little pins from like movies that I dig, for like a little pin collection. Dana Guerin, who guests a lot on the show, she also has a pin collection. So we're always like kind of like, oh, do you have that pin? Do you have that pin? Anyway, so I saw this. This will seem weird when you see it. You're like, what the hell is that? Right? It's like a book, and then you're like, oh, it's Michael Myers standing up. Oh, it's an action pin. Oh,
Is that like a door covered in like
well, remember, it's the
barnacles?
hedge. It's the hedge where he's like, Lori,
Oh,
your
oh, it's the
boyfriend's
head.
there. And she turns around, and then you're like, I don't see anything. Boom, boom. Anyway, and so then if I bought another pin, like shipping was free. So I got sucked. I was like, I should get another pin.
You
I
should.
think you will recognize this. Can you see it?
Oh, the Slaughtered Lamb Pub.
There
Yeah.
it is, baby. Slaughter
I
Lamb.
went when I was in college. There was a Slaughtered Lamb Pub in New York.
Love that. Well, obviously from, it's like
No, it was
they're
horror
all
themed. It was cool. They had 3 restaurants. One was called Jekyll and Hyde's.
oh
One
yes.
was called that. And
I've
I
been
think
there.
you've been there. Like
I've
Jekyll
been
and
there.
Hyde's has like, at least when I was there, it had like a Frankenstein that would go up into the
Yes.
roof and get like lightning and then come back and
It
come
was
alive.
the cheesy fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
love it. Well, I felt, yes, because as you alluded, it does look like a knock on wood. We finally closed some deals. So the little lo-fi sci-fi movie we're going to be shooting in Belfast looks like it's going to be going for March 11th start date. So fingers crossed.
I love the Irish produced movies. I just watched one called, I think it was called Evie. Have you ever heard of that?
Movie. No.
It was not what I expected at all. I thought it was going to be a creepy kid movie, and there's a creepy kid involved, but that kid grows up. So it's like this character study. And at a certain point, Hillary and I were watching it, and we're saying, this is very compelling. I mean, she's a very, like, the acting in it is like so good, and
Yeah.
that's sort of what keeps you involved, especially if it's a character study. So you're hanging out with this Evie character, and
Yeah.
the actress is really good, and we're like, but is this horror or is it just a creepy character? And then like by the end of the movie, it's like, oh no, okay,
It's a thing.
okay, but it's like the second act is a character study.
I'm excited. I mean, ours is very much like a father-daughter tale of survival. There's some creatures involved, but what will be, I think, nice about it, we have an amazing director in Brad Anderson who did like The Machinist and Session 9, and who's really talented. And
Session 9 has the one of the best sequences I've ever seen, and I've seen it ripped off so many times since. But it's when it's a dude running down the hallway and the lights are just shutting off behind
Peter
him.
Mullen, yeah, it's the old insane asylum, boiling pasta, and then all of a sudden
So good.
like the tape of the woman who's like giving in the mental asylum. It's terrifying, and you don't see a lot, but it's really great.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited that we're working with him, and yeah, so Mila Jovovich and Luke Evans are our cast, and it's really fun, and it will look different because of the locations we found than a lot of other things that are kind of in a similar genre, I think. So it'll be a little visually fun, but so it's very exciting. So if I suddenly do an Irish exit from the show, we have guest hosts that will be filling in, but just know, hopefully I'm making a movie that will never be on the show, but if it doesn't turn out, I'll be the first one to bring it on the show, because that's how I roll.
Well, and again, Tracy, shitty is in the eyes of the beholder.
That
So
is so
anybody who
true.
wants to can come on the show and say
It is so true.
their favorite shitty movie is The Wizard of Oz, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There are reasons maybe that movie's shitty. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm excited to talk about this one because I
Oh
mean
my God.
this is clearly Roger Corman trying to cash in on the Star Wars craze. Battle Beyond the Stars. And I think as we promoted on the page, I mean, look, you've got a score by James Horner, who goes on to win an Oscar for Titanic, but more importantly, does the Aliens and a lot of other great things with Cameron also. Cameron was like a model maker who, when the art designer got fired, was promoted because Gail Ann Hurd, who was the production manager, said to Roger, who she was working for, the guy who's doing the models is really talented. You should look into him. And then suddenly he was production designing and art directing in addition. It's really, that's kind of amazing. Bill Paxton, fun little trivia thing. He was actually like a carpenter helping him build the set. That's how Gail and Jim met Bill Paxton. He was like a carpenter working at Corman's.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Sort of fun. It stars John Boy himself, Richard Thomas, who is kind of the poor man's Luke Skywalker. We love it.
I love you say, like, you have to be of a certain age to know who John Boy
is. Good night, John Boy. Yeah.
The Waltons.
The Waltons. It's like you would watch that show and get cavities. It was so sweet. So
yeah, it was that and Little House on the Prairie. Were
so earnest and a capital E back when we pretended we were a good society. So yeah, this is great. You have John Saxon, you have Richard Vaughn, who seems really angry to be there. It's like a delightful movie. So
and George Peppard,
who was really like, he's a space cowboy, baby.
He has the best belt. I want one.
Oh my God. He has a belt that's literally at crotch level pouring like whiskey. And you're like, wow.
It sprays whiskey, club soda, and ice. It's a whiskey soda belt. It's a whiskey soda
bar. Walking
it's
bar.
Amazing. I want it. I want one.
So it's just super fun, but we got to bring up Steven, man, because let's get into this. This is crazy.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest tonight is the aforementioned video game designer and writer. His name is Steven Skelton. He loves Battle Beyond the Stars. Here he is.
Yay!
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's fun to be back. I was just wondering exactly how high Todd is tonight. And then when you had to explain your Michael Myers pin to him, the question was answered.
It's funny because when she first showed it, I thought it was Jason Voorhees because I have a Christmas ornament that looks just like that guy, so that's why I thought it was like Plankton or something, or
right? It's Plankton,
a sunken door that he's coming out of under the lake, because that's what Jason would do.
Yeah, no, that's a reasonable mistake.
But yes, I am
not at all high. Not at all high or over-explained.
No, that was good. He's like, I'm processing my character.
All right, Skelton. So, just to remind our audience, how do you define a great bad movie? I mean, Megaforce was the first one you brought up on our unaired pilot, which everyone can listen to on our podcast version.
It's The Lost, my favorite shitty movie episode.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
So you have an affinity for these kinds of movies. So what?
Yeah, I think I define, like a favorite shitty movie as, a movie that maybe wasn't like a necessarily mainstream release or as well known, but is something that you have some sort of either like, personal connection to or just affinity for. And, you enjoy it not because it's necessarily well made, but because it's got something in it that you connect with.
Yeah, some kind of spirit.
Something, yeah. Whatever it is, it could be anything. Like, with Battle Beyond the Stars, this is one of those movies that played on the local TV station probably 4 or 5 times a month. And so you could probably see it on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday night. And it was just available and probably fairly cheap to license for broadcast. So I've seen this movie probably over 30 times.
No.
Not necessarily in entirety, but in pieces and fifths.
How many times have
over the years?
How many times have you seen Star Wars by comparison?
I've probably seen Star Wars more, but Battle Beyond the Stars is in some decent double digits. Just because it was always on, WTTV Channel 4
Yeah.
in Indiana. That was it would either show up in an afternoon or in an evening on a weekend movie, and it was something that also, because in the 80s, you had to actually wait for movies to show up, and we didn't have them streaming services that all these youngsters are used to. We had to wait years and years between our movies. But
which one, Matt? Which
The
Halloween
first
are you
one.
talking about? There's
The
3
first-
movies called Halloween.
First one.
yeah, not counting the pin.
Well, and he steps out of a hedge in a lot of the Halloween movies, but I've
It's
seen
funny.
it a bunch of times. But it's not my fault that her little figure looks like a sunken ship door with like barnacles.
It
and
looked
seaweed on it. That's
exactly
not
like
my
the
fault.
hedge that he steps out of.
It doesn't look like a hedge at all.
Poor
It looks like a
Lori scared
door.
another one away. Good old Nancy Loomis, baby. No, but here's the thing I love though about we should just to set this up because let's bring people back in July, right? So obviously, 1977, Star Wars comes out. It's a huge phenom. Absolutely, 2 years after Jaws. Blockbusters are here to stay. Star Wars also heavily influenced by Akira Kurosawa films and Joseph Campbell's storytelling. This is blatantly Roger Corman saying, "I'm going to cash in on the 50s," because like when he was a young man, the 50s were happening, and so he's like, I understand that we're back to this cycle with science fiction put through this filter of the late 70s. So he comes on, he's like, let's do our version. So this was at the time $2 million budget. The highest budget Corman had ever spent. Now he'd done all the Edgar Allan Poe movies, all this kind of stuff. And most of it allegedly went to George Papard and Richard Vaughn, who I swear to God does not want to be here and is so angry. You think he's Richard Burton in Heretic Exorcist. Like he's so pissed with like booze coming out of his forehead. But it's fabulous.
He gives nothing.
Nothing. He doesn't move his face. It's like when
he just sits in a chair in
You
every
know what
scene
it
he's
is?
in.
Can I say
Like so great?
Oh my God.
He's like Denzel Washington in Bone Collector.
Oh my God, right. At least that he's supposed to be paralyzed with a mystery thing where remember Denzel Washington's paralyzed, but he can only move his mouse finger. I'm like, what paralysis is that? That seems very specific.
And had a very mobile neck.
Yeah. But like when it reminded me of watching it again, because I haven't seen it in about 20 years, this film we're here to talk about tonight. It reminded me of when you watch something, which I think you should if you haven't, and why we haven't done it on this show is Mystery Blood Rain. You have Ben Kingsley, who only sits on a throne, like he's Robert Vaughn in Battle Beyond the Stars. And also one of my favorite moments in cinema history is any movie that has Michael Madsen riding in on a horse. Like, come on! So good. And you've got Christiana Loken before she was the Terminatrix. And she's like, I'm Blood Rain. And Guinevere.
I worked with her once on a Dick Wolf show. How about that? Yeah.
Amazing. But anyway, so Battle Beyond the Stars. So this is Roger Corman going, let's be Star Wars, right? So he literally has like John Boy, as we've talked about, right? He's kind of casting him as like this simple farmer, right? Who's on like this remote planet who has to gather.
Where did he come up with that?
It's a planet of people that like wear like automotive formats.
It's like they took the outfits from Space 1999 and just refigured them, really. But they're on a remote planet. He has to get allies together to defeat a galactic overlord, essentially, who has like an army, not stormtroopers, but like guys who have prosthetics, probably from other Roger Corman movies, I'm assuming, because John Saxon, the overlord / Darth Vader figure, right, has a doomsday weapon, because don't they always, right, that destroys planets just like Star Wars. And so
let's have Skelton
crazy
take us through the details of this.
Yeah, what is happening?
It's very simple to tell the ultimate plot of this, but I know Skelton knows, minutia. So
the details are just like, we're gonna just do Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven. No, don't change anything. Just do that because we need the script this weekend.
Right. And so we should also say, right, so John Sayles, who's one of the co-writers was Ann Dyer, right? So Sayles and Dyer, but Sayles is kind of the fancy guy who would go on to become kind of almost after Cassavetes, kind of the second father maybe of American independent cinema, right? So Matewan, Passion Fish, Return of the Secaucus 7. 7 is very big for John Sayles. But like, and if you don't like The Big Chill, it's because you probably are a Lawrence Kasdan fan and you're like, but wait, he stole it from John Sayles' Return of the Secaucus 7, same movie. This is like, to your point, Magnificent Seven, which was basically based on Akira Kurosawa's films as well. So it's like Sayles is a smart guy who knows what's going on. So again, you have a soap opera in space that's a Western in space, thus the George Peppard space cowboy situation. So there's all these tropes being put into this Roger Corman blender by really smart people who would go on to be quite accomplished, but they started in this one.
Well, I think it also I guess what works for me about it is the simplicity of it, because they're not, everybody knows it's like we're making this movie in a week, so we have to keep things simple and not gonna really rock the boat too much in terms of concepts. Want things simple, easy to follow. So it's that formula. Bad guys are going to do bad things, but we're not going to do it the bad things for like a week. We got an errand to run.
Yes.
And we're going to come back and then do some terrible things. But so you better watch it.
Favorite part, because not only do I love villains that announce their plan, but they're like, and here's your ticking clock, 7 sunrises. And I'm like, oh, so I have a week before you.
Yeah, you gotta unless you need more time to gather, some help, because we could come back in 2 weeks.
We could do that, but let's make it 7 days arbitrarily. Yeah. But then you've got again this kind of, they're really going for production design and matte paintings. Again, this is Jim Cameron's big. Oh, I could take over and do things. And then, you've got weird cinematography. Half the time you see the shadows of the cameras on characters. It's kind of fabulous. If you watch it again, look for it. But there's like, there's this terrible thing that's coming down. It's like this spaceship. And then you have John Saxon.
John Saxon's head.
Oh my God.
And John Saxon's got, his bad guy has no, other than just I'm bad and I want to rule everything. Doesn't really have any other motivations.
But he's got a problem, right?
That reminds me of someone who's currently running for president.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed simplistic at the time, but it turns out to be very realistic.
Someone's running for president to stay out of prison.
Yeah.
This guy is running for president, right? Because he has this weird affliction where he needs parts from other people, so he conquers worlds to try to...
That's
right?
kind of like what's implied, but it's never like explained explicitly, because
it's a very.
I'm not going to draw any modern political comparisons to his character and anybody who's actually real, because I mean,
like Saxon spends like the first portion of the movie just kind of walking around. First off, you wonder, like, is the thing on his face supposed to be a scar or a birthmark, or I'm not sure. It's just a thing, I guess, to make him because bad guys have that, I guess.
Do we think his color that he's introduced with prefigures Avatar? Do we think?
Yeah.
Oh, the blue. You're
but
right.
He also is walking around, and he's got his arm in his vest like Napoleon.
Yes.
And
so
Napoleon, the Ridley Scott Napoleon, is about as funny as this movie. But
it was at least 3 times as long.
It was much longer, and at no point in Battle Beyond the Stars does a horse get shot with a cannon. So he's got the thing in his arm, and I guess
it's a cartoon horse, right?
I guess it's easy. I'm pretty sure they didn't shoot a real horse with a cannon, Todd.
Well, they used to in the good old days when America was great.
But Ridley loud. My favorite thing about Ridley Scott right now is that he lives in France, and when the French saw his version of Napoleon, again, when you cast the guy with like the Brooklyn accent, he's like, "Hi, my name is Napoleon." I'm like, okay. This is when you remember Ridley Scott cast Gerard Depardieu as Christopher Columbus, and you're like, I don't think he was French. Anyway, it's fine. But like when you see like that, and then the French were like, "You screwed with me."
He was, though, Tracy. He was a rapist. So there's that.
Right, but it's the wrong nationality. I mean,
Oh, well, I guess you're right.
But it's like, no, it's like, let's get a Brit to direct a French guy to do the Columbus story. Oh wait, is that Sigourney and Queen Isabella? Complicated. But going back to, but when they asked Ridley about Napoleon, and the French were like, "Why did you change the age gap? Why did you change all this? Like, what?" And he's like, "Oh, the French, you guys don't even like yourself." Ah! And then he left, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Wow."
like that's not answering the question.
That's, by the way, that's how I want to answer every question I don't want to answer. I'm just gonna like make some like provocative statement and exit stage left. I'm just, okay, but with this movie though, what's so great about it though, I think, is I'm just gonna conquer worlds. I'm gonna, and if you, but again, like every bad villain, right? He announces his plan. He gives away his time clock. He's like, I have a doomsday device. I can obliterate you unless you let me just live here. But again, if your plan is, I want to take over your world, but if they say no, your plan is to blow up their world, then you're kind of a romper room villain because there's nothing to take over if you blow up.
Yeah, and then you're like, if your whole thing is like, I need more body parts to live,
Then you
disintegrating planets, then you're like, oh, I never think ahead of these things.
Oh,
now we got to go find another planet.
Maybe that's the 7-day thing. It's like kind of a bluff. It's like, I'm gonna blow you up if you don't give me.
Well, no, because at the beginning of the movie, he does blow up a whole planet.
He does,
right.
Much like Star Wars. Like, oh,
yeah, exactly. And his ship is an awesome like combination of the blockade runner front and a Star Destroyer butt. And kind of no, not that one.
No, I was like, but like his, like literally Saxon's is like a hammerhead shark with boobs.
Well, no, that's Thomas's. That's Nell.
Is it?
Yeah, that's not Saxon's.
It matches. Like when he comes down and he's bearing down.
No, Saxon's. Stop showing that picture, Todd.
I'm not showing it. It's Tracy. Leave me alone.
No, Saxon's ship is the big long giant one that is literally looks like the front of a Star Wars blockade runner and the back of a Star Destroyer that just jammed together.
Or like
I don't think we'll get sued for this.
The opening of this scene, of this movie rather, it must have been the inspiration for the opening of Spaceballs. Like he just
it's so long.
It's so long. And this one's trying to be longer than Star Wars, which is not what you should do. You shouldn't try to make things longer. They should be shorter. Running time. But yeah, Spaceballs has that really long opening with the back that says "We break for nobody," and this totally reminded me of that.
But like, that's super long. But like, he shows up, is immediately the bad guy. Like, what I think really works about the first half of this movie is the pacing, because the first half actually clips along,
right?
And mostly because he just shows up immediately going, hey, you rubes, I'm John Saxon, and I'm going to take over your planet in a week. We got a delivery to make, and then we're coming back. So you better be ready to be ruled by me, and don't go looking for help. Or
does anyone feel like someone went to the Goodwill and picked out these outfits?
Yeah. It's just like some old sweaters.
Yeah, and weird jewelry.
Yeah, it's a little funky, but I love that. But there's an innocence and earnestness of which our poor man Skywalker, good old Shad, Richard Thomas, who comes in and he kind of looks almost like a mime here, but he's not. He's our hero. And I just like and then I think isn't this Julia Duffy? Yeah,
I think it is.
From the Newhart show.
From Newhart
show.
Yeah.
But then I was also distracted.
Look at his belt.
Look at the belt. I know. I was like, it's like a new wave belt. I felt like I wanted to go back to like Danceteria in New York City or something.
Yeah, it's
that belt inspired a whole new wave of music.
It did. I was like, is Olivia Newton-John going to follow? I mean, there's a lot going on in that sequence.
But he just announces he's just going to like, look, I'm going to get help. And everyone's like, you're a stupid kid. And then he's just like, I'm on my way. And like, there's no pausing, which is great. Yeah. He puts on his car mat vest.
And there's a bunch of light brights here, I think.
Yeah, starts flipping switches, talking to the spaceship that he flies around, and which is the horse one, with the AI, with the Nell, which is this just amazing design. Like it's got like it's like hammerhead shark with a cross with a horse and boobs.
Yeah,
and a jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, and the jack-o'-lanterns on the inside, but this thing is just amazing.
But the fact that they go to the point of actually putting, dare I say, nipples on the spaceship. Like they don't want you to be confused. No, we made it to have boobs. You're like,
And I've always wondered, and I don't know, and maybe Jim Cameron can help us, but I always wondered, like, yeah, the nipples on the boob ship, like, were those supposed to be like guns or like landing thrusters, or were they ever supposed to do something? And they just didn't.
yeah,
But I don't know. But here's the thing that's actually like, if you think, I didn't realize this until years later, of course, because I didn't really know anything, as a kid, or think about much about like special effects or that kind of thing. What's really great about that model, that's clearly one of the models that they spent the most time on constructing, because it has all of these kind of like curved surfaces that are a lot harder to construct than just kind of straight boxy stuff.
the model.
Because some of the other ships are a lot more boxy and just kind of like, well, we got to finish this one today. Stick this greeble on here, this thing here. Give me that battery, put it there.
Like, I appreciate like the detail that they're trying to put on. Like there's little ports, there's little. I mean, they really are kind of trying to do things, and I feel like even this scene, this comes out the same year. Speaking of Ridley Scott, right? That Alien comes out.
Yeah.
Where we go in and Dallas and then Ripley, right? What is Special Order 937? I mean, it's kind of on theme and on visual look to what the big studios were doing. But here's Corman going, I'm going to try to do it too. And
we're going to do it for a tenth of the cost.
I love that spirit. He's like, I got this.
But it does. But they do have, like, especially like the inside of the Nell ship, like that, all that art direction is like, okay, yeah, we're clearly just using a bunch of, pool noodles. But
they said that in some of the like scenes like that, like some of the padding and stuff, once Cameron came in and took over, that he was spray painting McDonald's like
like the McDonald's
using
trays and sticking up there, just to get some depth and pattern and
texture, and I'm like, okay, that's cool,
and it works. It's something that I bought as a kid. I just bought. I didn't think about, if these, sets are cheap, or that's some McDonald's, cup holder or anything like that. I just was going along with it. And I think a lot of it was, it was some good art direction. It was just good use of the materials and in patterns that were put in a pattern that, like, wishing we'd had better materials to use instead of this. But if we did, we would have still done the same kind of layout.
Absolutely, and
I love movies that have this many clear sets.
Yes.
It's
and
not.
Half the time you can see the studio floor. I mean,
it's just great.
Which I love that, but I think also what's kind of fun, because I think Stephen, you're right. Like, essentially, the plot is once we get John Saxon going, you got 7 days or I'm nuking your ass. Right?
Yeah.
Like, basically, then all of a sudden, you've got John Boy's like, well, I got to get us out of here. I got to get weapons because, we're kind of hippy dippy farmers. And I don't know if that's a political statement because, it's, 78 when they're filming this, but they're like, we got to go somewhere where there's weapons. We just don't have that here. So then he has to go to this, like,
now all the farmers, by the way, are armed to the gills.
Yes.
Not yet. Not until we get George Papard.
No, I didn't mean the movie. I meant
actual, no, they're all, it's all compounds. And
when Reagan destroyed all the independent farmers and then paid professional farmers to not farm, and then they had time to buy more guns, which I think was worked out well for all of us.
All of us.
So then you're like, okay, but look at this model work again, Cameron doing this. But if you're an Aliens fan, this is very similar to when they in the deep salvage Narcissus space shuttle at the opening of Aliens, and they pull her into Sky Station. Like, this is like he pretty much recreates this in Aliens. So if you're a fan of Cameron's early films with Gale, like, he's kind of actually redoing. This is a warm up.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons that I always loved this movie, was because at the time, because also at the time, in the coming out of the 70s and into the 80s, were same channel, WTTV, Channel 4, Indiana, mornings would do original Star Trek reruns. And so, I, grew up on, those shows. And so something like Battle Beyond the Stars had come out, where the effects are kind of at that level.
And Buck Rogers looked a lot
And
like
Buck Rogers, yeah, exactly. Buck Rogers.
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Yeah, the original Battlestar Galactica, and they're kind of all in that same range of that style of effect and that quality of effect. So
Totally.
I'd register was like, okay, this doesn't look as good as Star Wars, but I don't really care because the spaceships are cool,
Yeah.
and I like the models and stuff. So
they're very detailed for a film of this budget. I mean, there's a lot of attention to detail here, and the tiny, and I don't know. Again, it doesn't, for what it is. This is, you could tell the guy doing this is going to go on to do other things.
This movie is filled with so much visually.
Yeah.
In the entire time, and I think that all that limited money that they're throwing and focusing on sets and those effects is sort of why it's an awesome shitty movie.
Totally. I think that's hilarious.
What did Matt say?
He's like, yeah, Murakami, who's the director, who was an animator of note, actually was nominated for an Oscar for, speaking of the Oscars, for a short film he did back in the day. But he'd worked with Corman. He came in and did this, but he has like an animator's eye predominantly. So that working on this scale also probably gives it a unique feeling for the Corman group. But yeah, he's like probably had a PA standing outside the Alien set waiting for them to throw set pieces like closing time.
Yeah,
I think probably so. But it's this weird thing though, where you've got like our Skywalker, our Shad protagonist who lands because he's got to talk to this guy, this old doctor who's in this kind of space station. He's like, you guys have the weapons, you've got to help us arm because we're farmers, we're hippies, and we've got John Saxon on our ass. What are we gonna do, right? And so this scene, I have to say, today would be probably sort of canceled. A little awkward.
Oh God, yeah. This whole sequence is
Jesus Christ. What's happening?
It's hilarious because like he goes to the space. This is his first stop, and this is his in the plot of the movie. This is where the other old guy that used to, I guess the Nell ship was the other old guy's ship that he's flying around now. But he told him, hey, go to the space station because this is my buddy is there and he'll have all the weapons you need. I haven't seen him in a while, but I'm sure he's fine. And so this is his first stop. So he gets there and, first off, it's just a bunch of, people pretending to be robots. But actually everybody's doing a really fun job. They're doing like that kind of just very stilted robot stuff and tons of just whir noises whenever they're moving around, and it's actually all pretty well done. Like all the physicality, I think all the actors are doing a really good job with that. I always enjoyed those robots.
B version of Devo, and they're like, well, let's get rid of that now with the red helmets. But it was like a warm up to like that. You're like, oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
But so he eventually.
By the way, I feel like before we go on, that guy Tracy, the guy who was going to see, they were talking about, whose head is sticking out of that thing.
Yeah, that guy.
This is what, if Ice Pirates fans, this is what Bruce Valanche's character is parodying.
Oh my God.
Pirates.
Oh my God, yes. Totally it is. It totally is. Because basically the joke is that this old guy is essentially a cyborg now who's like, oh, whatever, but his brain is still there. And you can tell no one really cared to like lift the camera to make it work or fit it for the actor. They're just like, well, that's good enough. That's fine.
We can see most of his mouth.
A vacuum hose, if you look really closely, like I'm so here for this.
It's a really disturbing thing because what happens here is like Henry Thomas walks into first off, he's like met this guy's daughter who's like the only other human on this station, and she's just fixing the robots, and there's a comic bit where she thinks he's a robot and almost kills him. Yeah, fun. But then he goes to see this guy, and when he walks in, that guy's like guts doors are closed, and it's like they open up like it's a greeting, like, "Hey, buddy, look at my robot guts."
Like Predator when he's pissed.
Yeah, it's like why did you open this? But and then the old guy is
it's a bug. It's a programming bug.
His whole thing is just like, hey, you should stay here and doink my daughter. You can have her. like that's his soul. That's all. He will not get off that subject.
He goes one step further where because like you said, right? He's basically a head, sort of cyborg chick is the only human on. And he's basically like, you should have sex and procreate with my daughter, even if she doesn't want to. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like, this is a PG movie. He's like, if you could just rape my daughter, that's cool. I was like, oh my God, this is PG 1979.
Oh yeah, but we come back to that theme with a couple of dudes
Yeah,
later in
we
the movie
do.
too.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, that's
PG
like
in the
you
70s
forget
was
that.
unreliable.
That's the bit I kind of forget as from younger days where I'm like watching it
Well,
over
'cause
the
when
weekend,
you're
going like, these guys are very rapey.
Yeah, you're like,
whoa, this is not. And they were supposed to be comic. They were started out as comic relief, and now they're like, oh, this is awful.
And that like gave way to the 80s where all the comic relief were also rape.
We're all
It
sex
was
criminals.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Rape was hilarious.
oh my God. So but again, family film PG, let's bring in all those dollars, $2 million to get back, right? So we can slip that in back in the day, so to speak, unfortunate metaphor. And so he's like, Richard, it's like, no, that sounds okay, but I need weapons because my world's gonna, so who do I speak to about that? So,
but I can't even I just watched it again this weekend, but I think the guy's just like, I don't know, I don't got any weapons.
yeah, exactly.
Like it's just kind of like, sorry,
right?
you know, all I got is my daughter.
Yeah, but what you find out about the daughter is that she's like, oh, I just basically like, repair the robots, and we do introduce her in a, which I think is really funny considering that they're all robots. But you introduce her in a lab coat because Corman's like, I got a lab coat. She's a scientist. Yeah. It's like she repairs robots. She doesn't need a lab coat. It's not. But but she has a really fast ship, right? So he's like, well, I have my ship, and you have your ship, and you're kind of smart and hot. Why don't we both take our 2 ships to go to the next place? Because maybe we can get weapons. Because John Saxon has given us enough time to kind of look around.
Yes,
Yeah, 7 days.
I got time, but we don't got a lot of time.
I mean, God created the world in less time. He's had a day off for that.
But then she's just kind of like, okay,
I'll go with you.
Like I've met you. You've been here like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I guess my alternative is like my dad head in a jar. And he's only got one thing he wants to talk about ever, and it makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This is a typical small town America situation.
By the way, smart. Yeah, the farmer's daughter.
Cute farmer guy comes into town looking for mercenaries, and you go off with him.
A little bit about this, though, right? This is Darlene Flugel, who actually passed away a couple years ago, sadly, but she played Robert De Niro's girlfriend in Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America.
Oh, yes.
Douglas's Flame and Tough Guys. She was Friedkin's crackling crime noir leading lady in To Live and Die in L.A. And she also was Billy Crystal's ex-wife in Running Scared.
Oh, right.
So she had a hell of a career as a Ford model and transition.
Skelton
we just watched.
Yeah, we just watched Running Scared. It's Skelton's favorite movie.
Yeah,
it's my favorite. Yeah. It's my favorite, but it's my favorite like buddy propaganda movie.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, I can watch Gregory. Gregory Hines gone way too soon.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah,
we're incredible in that film together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Matt likes her in Tough Guys too.
Tough Guys. Yeah.
Really good, and she has a real presence here. I mean, she's not given a whole lot to play with in terms of the writing. It's just she's like Florence Pugh in Oppenheimer. She's got.
There's not a lot on the page for her, but she kind of fills in.
She's interesting
with just her personality, which is makes up for it. And then the movie starts doing something really smart, which makes no sense story wise. But then they kind of just stop worrying about explaining where he finds people. And he just starts randomly running into mercenaries to hire. Like he just randomly comes across George Peppard, helps him, stave off some space pirates. And then, George Peppard, of course, is cowboy. And he's a classic space cowboy, right down to the kind of Confederate flag on his spaceship.
Yeah, why it ruins it?
Because that was the 80s,
like topless lady pinups behind him, and they still got a PG rating because no one was
because Dukes of Hazzard started in the late 70s, right?
Yeah, well, but like 70s and 80s, it was more TV shorthand for good old Southern boy had a Confederate flag patch on a hat or a bandana or something.
Right. But also, so like
we're making moonshine.
Yeah.
right, in space. But like, well, like he's out there hanging out with the space cowboy, the hot scientist lady.
She just gets kidnapped.
She gets sucked into, but then we have again like the second attempt at like rape.
Yeah, a little more like, ooh, is he gonna?
But like, let's take
anything he's proposing here sounds bad.
Exactly, but like, look at these sets because it's like the ceiling and the floor is a little Benihana. It's a little weird, but then you get to this part where you've got the lizard guy who's kind of like a poor man's Sleestack, right?
Yeah.
Looking at it, and then you've got these two guys who are like twins who don't have hearing, which pays off sort of in a plot development later. Who, if you're a Star Trek fan, like the Cage, the original Star Trek pilot.
Yeah, they kind of look like the Talos 4 aliens.
They're the Telosians, right? So you've got like short bus Telosians, you've got short bus Sleestack, and then you've got this guy who's kind of like towards the camera, right, who's got like tribal indigenous people tattoos.
Yeah, he's kind of like a pseudo Conan the Barbarian, but who's on a spaceship for some reason.
And just
I guarantee you, all the excessive, gross sexual stuff in this movie, even though it's rated PG, were notes from Corman himself.
Yeah,
we need a lady with gigantic boobs in a spaceship.
We're getting to that, Todd.
Yeah.
I'm just saying all the stuff that you're saying about gross sexuality, I guarantee you Corman said, put that in.
Matt's right though, that the ceilings they're like grates. They're red here. Cameron, when he's in charge and directing.
Oh yeah, he does that same ceiling sequence.
But it's the Cameron blue. Yeah. I think Matt's right to. I think it's blue and the red is the Benihana. Together, it's like I just really want mustard sauce, but it's all good. But you look at this and it's like, but they're going for it. They're really trying to do this. And then my favorite, you have to talk to us about these guys, Stephen, because I love
Nestor.
They're like there's like 5 of them and they have collective consciousness and
they're like a hive mind of like giant erasers.
And plus they're like, you know what, we're just gonna put like a hairnet over or something,
like a swim cap, and then we're gonna like put this eye sticker on your forehead and just pancake you with this makeup, and then you guys all pretend to eat the same hot dog.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know who. Okay, JSL. I don't know whose name this is, but thank you for reading it. You're right. It is the hive mind. It's or the oversoul, if you will, where they're all connected together. And I love that these guys are so fun because they basically, there's like this great quip of dialogue. Again, this is where you remember that John Sayles is kind of writing a comedy sci-fi movie where he's like, "Oh, do you need help? We're so bored. We only have one brain together. We'll help you." And he's like, "Well, we can't pay you." He's like, "That's fine." And you're like, okay. And so then the 5 white, like kind of Lilliputians by way of Wonka Zoompa Loompas, but like white, they're now in on this mission.
And they just showed up out of nowhere.
Nowhere.
Like again, like another like immediate chance meeting, like in the vastness of space.
They look like Romero's like a person from
Not wrong. Caesar Romero for you young kids out there.
Caesar Romero, yeah.
Totally true story.
And now I can't remember who do they come into. Is it Sybil Danning next?
Well, next is Sybil Danning. My favorite though is like while we're talking about makeup.
Oh
you
yeah.
Can literally see the line under like it's just like they're trying. This is someone's first film too. And I just feel like, you know what, good on them. Good on them for trying. But
it's also like that's also kind of like 60s Star Trek era.
Yes.
Look, like in terms of makeup. So I think it's kind of like my head as a kid. I was just kind of making that time leap and just kind of giving the pass.
Yeah. Well,
because it was like, an old Star Trek episode.
Like there's a Star Trek episode, but then also kind of the prosthetics with the nose. It's like Eye of the Beholder Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Where the hot blonde's the ugly one and everyone else is like, again, whatever. Yeah. But like, I just think it's interesting. So then we check back in because, Sayles does what Sayles does. And he's like, oh, look, Akira, which is the planet, which is, again, an homage to Akira Kurosawa, right? Because he's like, I know what I'm doing. I need you to know what I'm doing. Because back then in 79, 80, they would have assumed audiences would still care and know about Akira Kurosawa in this kind of genre. I don't know that I would.
John Sayles was just trying to communicate to other filmmakers that he knows what he's doing.
I know what I'm
It's not as
doing.
bad as it looks.
No, and
I
because
think it's also because it's like I can put whatever I want in here. I can do whatever I want in the script, and I'm not going to get red penciled.
Yeah,
No.
nobody's gonna realize I'm making a reference.
As long as the pages are turned in on
But-
shooting day, they're going to get shot.
But here's the thing though about like if you read interviews with Roger Corman, again, Stanford graduate, you ask him what his favorite movies are, he's going to say Lawrence of Arabia, he's going to say Citizen Kane. So Corman would know and appreciate and go, oh, well done, right? So you can see that sales knows who's paying, signing the checks kind of thing. But again, what's funny
Corman just says that because he has to.
I think sales
his favorite movies are not those. They're not those.
He's actually pretty erudite. I don't know if you've met him. Like he really means it. He just doesn't make those movies because he wants to make money, But one of the things I also really appreciate, because again, there's like Hidden Fortress, which is famous Kurosawa film that Lucas certainly pilfered from.
Star Wars, yeah.
That's a polite word for it. This film certainly does as well. But no better than that. I love the introduction of the great Robert Vaughn. Apparently they made a pirate picture, so they've got like a pirate chest of jewels behind him.
Yeah, he's living in like a soundstage of hanging blacks with curtains and just actual like old-timey pirate treasure.
I love this scene too, this introduction of Robert Vaughn, because the entire time there's water dripping noises happening in the background. I have a clip of this scene.
Oh my gosh.
If you want the people to understand what we're talking about.
I think we need to roll sound.
Let's get a
All
clip.
right, I'll roll it.
I came back for a rest. There is not a planet in the galaxy where there is not a bounty on my head.
What makes you so popular?
I settle disputes very quickly. I'm very good at it, and I don't care who I work with. I've collected a lot of enemies along the way.
You kill. For pay?
I have no home, no family, no principles. What else would I kill for?
For pleasure?
No, it's strictly business with me. Now, what's your pitch?
I'm hiring mercenaries to protect against an invasion. But food and shelter is all we can offer in payment. All our wealth is in our culture.
I could buy your planet 10 times over with what I've gathered in this room. Plutonium, cadmium, qualine crystals. I've been very well paid for my work.
It's like there's like an aquarium just off camera.
It's so, oh my god!
Although I did like in that profile shot how Jason Statham was just peeking around the corner in the background.
Yeah,
that is so spot on. I don't. It's funny because allegedly Robert Vaughn got a majority of the budget, and he just shows up and does it. But Todd did a spot like it's exactly what Vaughn does for the whole movie.
He gives nothing to anyone.
Nothing.
He gives a little bit more when he's dying.
His death scene
actually has a little bit of emotion.
But I think that's just because he's mad. He's got all that garbage on his face.
I know, because somebody put like beef carpaccio on.
Yeah, he's got like they just emptied a can of Campbell's vegetable soup on his face.
You're probably right, because that would be cheaper. Yeah, totally. But you're right. So do we go from meeting that guy, where he's like, yeah, sure, I'll help you, whatever.
But he has the coolest spaceship.
He's got the coolest spaceship.
His spaceship is very, very cool. Like, it reminds me of an Elite Dangerous ship from that game.
But you know who has the coolest outfits?
So now we hit Sybil.
Baby.
Now,
Sybil.
what I love about her introduction, first off, it's established that she's actually a really, really good pilot, and Richard Thomas is like, ew, girl. So first off, that costume, which is like,
I mean,
an amazing like mix of like Guar and live action Flintstones. I want to say.
Also, she's supposed to be a Valkyrie, y'all. So they're like
Yeah.
Viking lady fun.
But also, if you go back to the image, because the angle that she shot at, they've got her like tilted back, and this is the only angle you ever see her shot at in her spaceship.
Yeah.
So you get a better look at her boobs.
Well, she's Sybil Danning.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, like okay, but she looked so uncomfortable.
Well, she does, because it's like, by the way, she's so gorgeous. She can do anything she wants. But like, if just aspiring filmmakers at home, this is, her breasts aside, this is the absolute worst angle to shoot any woman independent of her age and beauty. Like, you do not shoot underneath the chin. You do not do, she can pull it off, but I'm pretty sure to like, screen right is like a Viewmaster. I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, like there's like a Viewmaster. It looks like there might be like one of those carousel slide machines.
Totally great. I'm like, you know what? They're like, you guys, what have we got in props? It's delightful.
It's Sybil Danning in this movie that inspired Amazon Women on the Moon. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah, that outfit for sure. Like she changes into another improbable outfit later in the movie.
Well, she's got the she's like, okay, she's like, I want to do what Bob Mackie would make for Cher, and they're like, this is Roger Corman. And then it's like, that's the approximation of what she wants. I have to say, full story, when I was very fortunate enough to work with Galen Hurd, who was production manager on this fine production, she always had mad respect for all the Corman alum. There was an open door. If you ever knew Corman, if she knew you when she was working for Corman, there was an open door, always still is. And Sybil had projects she wanted to pitch. And Gail was, I forgot what film, I think she was on location somewhere, so she couldn't hear the pitch personally. And so she was like, Trace, can you hear the pitch? And I was like, Sybil Danning's going to come pitch Pride? I was like, so like amazed, because I had a Texan Republican father, so I knew who Sybil Danning was. Her films were always on. I was like, Dad, Sybil Danning's coming. He was like, oh, it's like, it was such a nerd 20-something thing. But I think she was so excited to meet a female executive who perhaps was familiar with her work, at that time. This was like in the early 2000s. And she's really smart and very cool and wickedly funny. And so I just wanted to say, like, really cool lady, should not have perhaps only been, treated like this in film, but it was a different era. So
yeah, no, it's like, and Henry Thomas is just like, yeah, get out of here.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, but if you're this fucking
Richard
guy,
Thomas, or sorry, not Henry.
You're this guy, and you're like, what is your problem with Sybil Danning? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Where is he on the Kinsey scale?
He hates her right away. He hates her so much, and the whole time
it makes no sense. And then she just kind of like tags along anyway, because she's like, I got my own thing I'm doing here.
I think all the mercenaries in this movie, regardless of where they're from, all get involved because they're kind of bored.
It's pretty much the case, because so much of it is like George Peppard is like, he's involved because he kind of owes Thomas for bailing him out, and so he's the guy going to bring all the weapons for
and George Peppard
off ground assault.
George Peppard is obviously the Han Solo character.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
And I mean, the hive mind literally says,
They literally say, we don't have anything else to do. Why not?
So
we're bored, and we only we're so bored.
What's our character's motivation?
Yeah, they're
bored.
Yeah, they were like, oh, we were hoping that we were going to run into somebody who needed mercenaries.
Well, this and then
in the vastness of space.
People are goddamn bored, you guys. That's high stakes. They have to get involved.
But I love that, like, they get back the girl from like the Lizard King or whatever, and she's like, thanks for coming, John Boy, or whatever. And then we have this scene where they're camping out with, I guess, a white sheet from like
and there's Sybil in her costume change.
Sybil in her costume change, and they're he's like, George Peppard's playing the harmonica, and they're like roasting hot dogs. The hive mind that I want these guys to be someone. Please add them to like a Robert Palmer video with the girls. Please, like, let's do that. Like, just. But
it's either that or a David Lynch movie.
It's so good, I know. And so then you've got like literally this guy's discovering hot dogs for like the first time,
he hands it over his shoulder to the guy behind him to bite, and then they all chew.
It's so good. It's just such a bizarre thing. So, but it's like, if this is a Western, this is where everyone goes around the campfire and they tell
Yep.
stories, and we have a little bit of character development. So we kind of care about people, because why do we have to care about people? Because they're all going to die. So character
Yep.
development. This is the beginning of John Sayles doing his thing. And so everyone else is like, oh, hot dogs are good. And Sybil is like, I'm falling on my bra because I'm Sybil Danning. And then we get to Robert Vaughn, who just like look of death at children. Like,
Yeah,
this
it's like he hates these children.
he hates the children
He
so much.
hates these children more than anything else in the universe.
Totally. Look at the anger on his face. I mean, it's so delightful. But the joy that these guys have with like the hot dog scene is just I don't know
it's
why
Nestor,
I love them so
and they've
much.
got like their swim caps, and I guess I mean is that like medical tubing around their necks,
I
Yeah.
think it might be.
or
Or
like or no that would be too expensive. That's got to be like fish tank tubing.
It's
Yeah,
I mean, they're
probably.
just but they're kind of so fun, and they have like their own expression. I don't know. I really like Nestor. I think they're
No,
really-
those guys, the Nestor guys are a lot of fun because then later
They're
on,
so
when one of them
good.
gets captured, they're like, oh, he's gonna be tortured, and they're like, oh, we can't tolerate pain at all,
mad.
and then,
They're
and then
like-
the guy just dies.
Cannons, yes, totally that too.
They should have been gingers, not like swim caps.
Well,
They
it's
should
all
have been
but,
gingers.
but again, then I appreciate they go back to this shot, right? Which we use the same shot. I can't.
Yeah,
remember
the bug,
times.
the bad guy bug
Oh,
ship.
they're like little beetles, but look at the detail that Cameron went to. You know what I mean? It's so good. But this is when you know we're going into the final assault. We know that there's going to be a problem. We know that the stakes are rising. We know that Saxon is overpowering our ragtag group of
Fucking Saxon, right? He's always
And he's been like he's just been out of the loop for a while.
totally.
He gets like a new arm, and
Yes, we will definitely get there. The glove scene, yeah, the glove scene is amazing. So really quickly, so basically we have that. So Sybil's back in the fight because again,
in the new
Jonathan
outfit, in the new improbable outfit.
the new outfit. Because if I'm in space, I'm feeling this looks really comfortable. So that's fun. But back on Earth, our space cowboy, and this is like this is just literally a still from the film, but you can see the rotoscope work of 1979. Like they don't even really try. You know, they're just like, well,
Close
and
enough.
it's like in this, you're like, well, like you could literally see the pen lines, and there's
And
some-
are those are those Buck Rogers guns or
they look a little bit like it, but then you got one guy holding it like he's got a leftover from Dillinger. So it's hard to tell what's going on. My favorite, I had to take a still of him because he only shows up in like maybe 20 seconds, and I'm like, what is he wearing? And then I thought, oh, he's got a pirate like earring in, and I'm wondering if that goes with Robert Vaughn's pirate chest of goodness. But in the fight, this guy shows up with like his nose covered, which is probably not what you would
it's
do if you're
kind of
running.
almost like a S&M cap.
Okay, maybe.
It's like he was like in the middle of something
Yeah,
when
yeah.
the fighting broke
Yeah.
out.
SM
One
cap
scene.
that's too small for
He
his
was-
head. It's
He was
supposed to,
released
yeah.
from the dungeon so he could go defend the planet.
Totally great. It's totally great. It's very it's
But
very
we gotta this is also the part in the movie where we see Papard's Scotch belt,
yes, we do
Yeah.
see Scotch Belt, we
which
do
is, from what I can tell, the only thing his belt does is dispense scotch and soda and ice.
absolutely but like the everyone's shooting, everything is on, and then all of a sudden we actually have something that sadly has befallen a lot of American diplomats.
Oh
And they're-
yeah, this is the total
The
Cuba sonic attack.
sonic attack. It's not just for American diplomats in countries that own Donald Trump. I mean, it happens in this film here. But like, so then we have our ragtag group are like, oh man, we've got like a duct tape backpack.
I was just looking at that. Yeah.
People are bleeding. I mean, it is a bad scene, y'all. We don't know where the light's coming from, but it's
a
there.
mess. But
Um,
there's so many people in this movie.
So many
That's-
extras.
That's kind of a thing I love about a low budget movie like this is there's so many actors that probably got fucked on that day, but at
Kimberly,
least
Cowboy Bebop for the win. Totally.
Cowboy Bebop. At least there was a lot of actors, in there.
Yeah.
I like that. It's-
Well, and also what I love is that they've been making fun of these, kind of Telosian Oompa Loompa figures, and then I was like, no, stop making fun of our little friends. They don't have ears, so
Yeah,
they're
they can't. Yeah,
bursting.
the sonic machine can't kill them.
Totally. So fast you can say Tiananmen Square, but 20 years before, you've got the Talosians going, we will block this. And it's not really so much a tank as you can see there's two like spotlights.
Yeah, it's more like maybe a couple of golf carts with some cardboard boxes on them.
I think that's right. So
and I think these guys, like, wasn't it explained that it's like they generate a lot of heat?
They generate heat
or something,
and then they use up. They're kind of like an iPhone that doesn't hold the charge anymore. So
yeah,
after they die,
and then they keel over. Yeah,
they're like iPhone 6s.
They're like iPhone 6. In an iPhone 15 world. And so then they're like, can you get the little guys out? They're like, okay. So then they just, no, we never go back to those sweet guys who just gave their lives up.
I'm assuming they're in the morgue.
And so then you've got, Sybil Danning, and all of her, lingerie, coming in going, hey, I'm sorry about your friends, but this is kind of fun. And he's like, it's not fun. Everybody's died. And this is her.
And she's like, it's kind of fun.
I'm like, where is she going? Like, where is she going? This is bizarre. It's
what famous nightclub is she about to?
I know. She's like, I gotta go hang out with Bianca and Mick. I'll, peace out. So
I don't care where it is. I would like to go.
You go right from her, but she gives this kind of, it's almost like the warrior cry because she's the Valkyrie, right? And she's like, what's her thing, Stephen? You've seen it 30 times. She's like, live.
Oh yeah, no, it's live well or die well or something. She's just trying to find a good fight.
Leave a bright ending.
A bright ending.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like live fast, die hard, whatever. But she turns it into some sexual thing, and then literally he's like hating on again. Straight male protagonist is hating on Sybil Danning.
Yeah, it's like not even explained like this whole time. Like she's actually been helpful. Like, why are you mad at her?
The best pilot. She has the coolest ship, and she's like totally trying out to be an.
She did a whole costume change.
She's fabulous.
He can't deal with his feelings for her. That's what it is.
He's a little repressed. But what's fun is that she lectures him and she's like, look, these are the 3 things that you should live by. And she gives him like this whole mantra. And then he looks at her because he's being such a punk. And she's like, you've never seen, she says like basically die in a beautiful death is what she means.
Yeah.
And then he looks at her like he's such a dick. And she's like, you've never seen a Valkyrie go down. And then she gives him this look. And you're like, no! And then she exits stage right. You're like, this is a PG movie in 1979. And then we go immediately from this heartbroken moment where they're like, you got to come over here. The guy who didn't show up and like, basically slept wet through his performance. He's got Carpaccio on his face.
Yeah. He's dead for some reason.
So now he's here. He's like, I'm going to buy it on a third-rate planet with hippies and farmers or what, and it's like, it's so bizarre to me, but I love that like John Boy is more concerned about this guy who is a dick to him than the hot girl going to Studio 54 who saved his ass.
Yeah.
And it's just this incongruous like lead protagonist role where you're like, what motivates him? What is he doing?
What I like is when
these are questions for John Sayles. We have to talk.
Questions for John Sayles. I have notes.
What I like about after Vaughn dies is Thomas just says, bury him with a meal, and the guys standing around are like,
wait, 4-course meal.
4-course meal. They're like, we're burying with food, a meal. They're like baffled, and he's like, yeah, that's because that's what we promised him, is a place to hide and a meal. And they're like, all right, I mean, that's a little weird, but I guess we'll drop the defense of the planet from John Saxon and cook up a meal for the dead.
We're gonna have Jose Andres save everybody in
wartime is very strange.
It's very strange. They're gonna be like serving scallops. It's gonna be great. So okay. Meanwhile, somewhere orbiting around in John Saxon land, they capture one of the nesters that we love, right? Like our white-faced friends with the third eye, which is, I guess, Johnny Sayles' shorthand for we're enlightened. We're enlightened. We have a third eye. So that's happening. And so then you get this crazy moment of comedy with John Saxon. This is a guy who like fights Bruce Lee, who's in like Elm Street, who's like the good cop in Black Christmas. And he's like, here he is on this ship going, oh, you've sawed on this like Nestor's hand and I don't have enough fingers and wait. And now he can't control his own hand, because the other Nestors are like, screw this guy, man.
They're still like psychically connected to the severed arm.
And like, can we talk about this outfit? Like, what's happening in this scene where they each have like a couple fingers and they keep hitting sprockets, and this is a whole.
And what are the pipes? What are the? Are those
I-
pneumatic tubes?
I thought those were left over.
Those,
from
yeah,
the-
no, Todd, those are standard issue space tubes.
was it-
Space tubes.
Oh,
Oh,
I see. I thought this was from the Hall of Fortress, like that Superman goes to, where he's like Kal-El.
What I like, it's like they're kind of like flying around in kind of a pseudo TARDIS,
Yeah, they totally are. It's
and
so
doing
great.
like some Doctor Who stuff there. We're just gonna punch some buttons on here, and then something's gonna happen eventually.
Yeah, I love that. So basically, this is the doctoring the TARDIS scene. Is that what I'm hearing? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's got that same kind of like
oh,
central
mine's in
layout.
It's Blue Man Group tryouts, and that's
Oh my God, Blue Man Group tryouts!
if you made them blue, they would be the Blue Man Group.
I think. Well, again,
And if they grabbed onto those tubes and they flipped
Yeah, they
around.
started doing rhythm and tricks and things. Yeah.
I love that. So everything's going bad, and so the space cowboy, because he's drunk, because he has like a belt.
Yeah, because he's been doing nothing but drinking scotch out of his belt for days,
100%.
like and eating hot dogs. He's
I
made
love
of
the
like
moment-
scotch and hot dogs.
I love the moment where his girlfriend says, and he like puts the scotch out of his.
Oh
belt.
yeah, and he's found time to get sweet on
like,
a local honey.
Didn't
Yeah.
you
Oh.
forget to mix that with ice and soda? And he's like, nope.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, nope.
No. But also,
We're in
this-
the end game now.
to be fair, fellas, they haven't established that they're sweethearts. He literally takes his gross, sweaty hat off, gives it to her, and kisses her without whatever, which is why she's looking at him like this.
Yeah.
Like, that's the scene where you're like, okay, gross, but 79. And so then we're like, where's our Valkyrie? Once again, they shoot her in the
There
most
she is.
unflattering freaking way. Never shoot a woman from this angle or a man from this angle for either. But like, she's game. And I should point out for the great Sybil Danning, she actually, the year this came out, won. So the Saturn Awards are like the Oscars for sci-fi and horror. She won Best Supporting Actress for this performance. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the actress.
She is so much fun in this movie.
She's always the best
that-
thing.
She's always
Yeah.
great.
She's great.
So yeah, just the only thing the
Howling
only thing
through
that I
your
regret
wall.
is that, and it's because it's a car movie, so there clearly wasn't the budget for more costume changes.
Yeah.
Like she really should have had like 7 costume changes throughout this movie.
Look, I'm just glad she got to keep her clothes on because that's usually what she's fighting in Hollywood films.
And looking at like the construction of those outfits, it's a miracle
Yeah.
she kept her clothes on.
She keeps her clothes on in a lot of movies. I don't think she's actually naked in Reform School Girls. I think she has her clothes on the
Because
whole
she
time.
tried it, but we talked about what they did to her in The Howling too.
Right, they fucked with her. Yeah,
This,
yeah.
which is unconscionable, and so forever she should be defended. But again, hire more female producers, and that won't happen. But like one of my other, so we have to get back to the plot, right? There's a doomsday machine that's going to blow away the planet that John Sachs has been, telegraphing for like a week and a half, and so we actually finally get to see what it looks like, which again looks kind of like a toilet plunger. There's all kinds. This is like weird. Like,
Yeah,
this-
there's like some like a measuring cup and some other doodads on it.
yeah, it's very like your first college kitchen, right? So as a device, and so we're there, and so then we have to see. Okay, we lose Sybil Danning. We've lost Vaughn to the Carpaccio attack, which was kind of off camera, but
I think we've lost the Nesters by this point too, right?
we're losing the Nesters, and then our lizard guy, the Slee Stack wannabe is he's trying, he's really trying. And then-
Our proto Grig.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, our little enemy mine. Little enemy.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, a little bit of enemy mine too. Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm. And so we lose him, but because they're so quirky and memorable, and we had the campfire scene as we do in all westerns, we actually do kind of care. We're like, oh no, the ragtag group he put together who are more interesting than Richard Thomas. They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah, like we're losing all the people we
we're
collected,
losing the character actors, and now we're stuck with like
losing all our Pokemon.
Yeah.
That's like ultimately the plot of this movie is he collects mercenaries and then he watches them die for him.
That's pretty much it.
And then you've got like Papard's going down. This is where you see like the pinups behind him. His
Yeah.
little like McDonald's coffee pad things are on fire, and he's playing the harmonica, and he's barely changing 3 notes, so it's not My Clementine.
Yeah, he's not really playing the harmonica. Yeah, he's just kind
It's like literally
of
playing
breathing
My
through a
Clementine.
harmonica.
I am no harmonica player, but I know and I have proof that I can play it better than him. I'm just saying.
This is another one of those film nerd Easter eggs, right? Sales knows what he's doing. He knows he's making a Western in space. So, like, when you think about, like, My Darling Clementine, Henry Fonda, who played the song and the thing, and it's Tex Ritter, whatever. So this is what's going on. So he's referencing, again, back in 79, people might still get those references. Today,
I think definitely, late 70s, early 80s, you're still going to get a lot of those Western references. For sure.
So it's one of those things
But
where,
not
again,
the kids who are watching. The kids have no idea.
kids will not. I mean, some of us had older parents, so when we watched this with our parents, we're like, "Oh, I get it." But
yeah, no, your dad would go at George Papard.
and then mom was like, "Well, you should really watch that." I'm like, "Oh, guys, Henry Fonda's Wyatt Earp or whatever." But like, you would. But I think that's part of that thing, though. But it's funny because I think we've been having a conversation about this with a project I'm working on, and we were referencing how, I mean, look, nobody was more of a comedic genius than Robin Williams. I mean, missed, loved, brilliant, undeniable. But when you watch him in Aladdin, I mean, which is a great tour de force performance, wonderful what he does in Aladdin, but he makes so many pop culture references that are so to that year.
Yeah.
That it doesn't hold up as well as, say, The Lion King or The Little Mermaid or some of the things because of that. And I think with science fiction, and it's something I'm trying to be mindful of a project I'm working on now, if you make it every time, if you don't get hung up on technology, especially if you don't have a big budget, you can aspire to make a movie that's evergreen because you're not dating it with things. And it's just something I think for filmmakers to keep in mind. And so it's funny to me that Sayles in the beginning of his career is referencing old Hollywood because he wants to be on that other side of things, and he would get there. So it's this cross section of the beginning of kind of new wave American independent film with Sayles that he would so represent, kind of getting that baton from John Cassavetes, I would argue, and going forth. But here he is in the science fiction film going, I'm going to reference a Henry Fonda Western. And
there's also one thing you shouldn't ever do, and it's a good lesson to take from this movie. If you can go back to that George Papard picture, is don't mount your flight controls clearly upside down. And so every time George Papard is trying to pilot a spaceship, that post is in his face.
Right. And also,
how can he see where he's going?
And also, isn't that a phone cord that's hanging down?
That's definitely a phone cord. Oh yeah, but there's so many sound effects.
It's on the wall, right? Remember, it's on the wall. You have those cords.
I swear to God, in the background of one of the spaceships, you just hear like a phone off the hook.
Yeah,
you do. You hear
spaceships had landlines. They were really
old school space trucks. Yeah.
Yeah, but so then you get to the point where the hammerhead shark with boobs ship is kind of into this. It's almost like the Phantom Zone. I think they're trying to go for that.
Yeah, they're trying to zap it away or whatever.
Yeah, they're trying to do that. Our heroes are rapidly trying to save the planet, and they're doing a pretty good job. And then you have a moment where we cut inside of John Saxon's ship, and what's weird is that you see him here where it's clearly blowing up, and then you see the exterior where they've actually blown it up, and you can kind of see like these are plastic gears and things coming at the camera. I don't have another cell, but they go back, and the explosion is rewound. So
it's like the same thing. Yeah.
And after it explodes, you go back and he's still hanging out in the ship, and you're
still like,
wow.
Boy, this explosion's taking a while.
You're like, you would just put that.
I do love in his ship. It's in that picture, like those like sharper image electro globes.
Yeah.
That they use as controls.
Yes. Yeah. Where you touch them and
where they're just like, hey, I got a buddy of mine. He can help us steal some of these off the back of a Hammaker Schlemmaker truck.
Well, exactly. And those came from like, the science fiction or the monster movies and the science lab. They would have had those, right? But, the bad guy is finally destroyed. But they go back to this shot. That's what's so weird about the order, where you're like, no, it's pretty much.
Oh yeah, it's so weirdly, like, wait, didn't this just explode?
We saw this, and now we're back to again. It's just, this is one of those things. It's
he's in the back part of the ship right there that is not fully exploded.
But the good news is that we lost the team we cared about, so there's some emotional weight to the movie, and then our two would-be lovers. In really unfortunate padded outfits, they've survived to fight another day and go back to Akira, where they could be a hippie commune and farmers, and the world is safe from weapons, which is not a bad message.
Yeah, I
as
mean, it was
Reagan
never
coming in
really made
1980.
clear what they're like. He's like, we don't have anything of value except our culture, and I'm like, dude, your culture is beige. Like, what exactly? Like,
Yeah,
everyone
your
is
culture,
beige. So, what
your
is the
culture's
culture there
stuck.
exactly?
But didn't you think it was kind of I mean, again, not to be whatever, because I think Sales knows what he's making, but there's a sweetness to our culture is what matters, not our weapons,
Oh,
not
for
our
sure.
Oh
faith.
yeah, it's definitely
And
anti-war.
then
Post-Vietnam kind of.
post-Vietnam for sure. And as again, this is like where Carter's wrapping up, Reagan's
Yep.
gonna get in. And in this moment, not only does he say our culture is valuable, but he looks at her and she's like, I can't believe we lost all these amazing people that we brought on this journey and basically signing them to a death sentence. When frankly he could have just did what he did and those people would be alive. But that's a different story. I don't think about that too hard. But he says something really beautiful and he's like, no, because with our culture, anybody who loved those people and remembers them and speaks well of them, they will be legends and they will be remembered because that kind of generosity and humanity will not be lost. So there's this weird peacenik, awesome, positive message after they've made Sybil Danning practically fall out of her stuff. We've had 3 almost near rape jokes. It's
Yeah.
PG somehow. And you've got people forcing consent, a father saying, rape my daughter, like all this stuff. And they're like, but love. And I'm like, this is a lot going on in this science fiction $2 million Roger Corman.
Not to mention that something they didn't even talk about at the end of the movie, which was, hey, wait a second. We know where dead Robert Vaughn's pirate treasure is.
That's right.
Mhm. Go get it. Why
Yeah.
don't they go get it?
We gotta get some more mercenaries.
No, they don't need that money because their wealth is in their culture.
For wealth
Yeah,
is in
I mean,
culture.
sure, of course, but
Let's
you
do,
know,
final
a little
thought.
nest egg couldn't hurt, Todd. That's
Well,
all I'm
yeah.
saying.
Let's do final thoughts on this so we can do our wrap up segments here. Skelton, what's your final thought about this great Corman sci-fi epic?
I mean, my final thought, I guess, is just that this was, it's in my favorites list just because, again, it was like something I watched a million times as a kid because it was on TV a ton of, and in the 80s, being a big sci-fi nerd, that was something that was like, oh, one of the few things that would come up on TV with any regularity that besides Star Trek, that had spaceships and stuff. So I was always on board with it when it showed up.
Spaceships are awesome. Tracy, do you have any final?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's something, and again, this is probably a nostalgia thing because I'm not the biggest fan of our current timeline. I saw this when I was a kid. I saw this when I was a kid with my dad. I was the nerd who took notes when I watched movies. I started writing down notes of heads of departments even then, and so like so many of the people that made films that really changed the way I looked at movies, and then including Gail Ann Hurd, who's my mentor. I wrote her a fan letter at 14. She hired me by 28. I'm her SVP at her company, right? Like she meant that much to me because I love that she started working for Corman. Again, also a Phi Beta Kappa from Stanford, who then wanted to be a woman doing what was then and probably still now seen as a traditionally male sci-fi action horror genre and just killing it. Like she and Deborah Hill, they were the women who really were more successful than most of their male peers in a time where it was much harder, I think, than it is now. We still have way room to go, but like those ladies really, to me, opened the door for certainly myself and my peers. And so this film to me is so cool because it's a Roger Corman movie, but really it's a student film for Jim Cameron.
Yeah.
Gail Ann Hurd, James Cameron. This cast is actually really great. And I just think it's a very special movie of a time that I have a lot of nostalgia for. I acknowledge the things that would be canceled today and everyone can be angry and clutch pearls. This is not the film to do that with. I think it's joyful and it's people warming up who would go on to change our industry. So it's really, if you're a film buff, you should see it. If you like sci-fi, it's delightful. It's certainly a relic of its time, but that's okay too. Let's remember the context in which these things were made,
Yeah. I mean, I think this movie was cheesy in 1979,
Absolutely.
but I think its dedication to its own cheese is what gives it, like a timeless, a worth revisiting kind of thing. It's a nice cheese. It's delightful.
Well, but it's cheesy in the same way that all most sci-fi in the late 70s, early 80s was.
Sure.
Like if you look at Battlestar Galactica and like Buck
This is also
Rogers.
a Star Wars ripoff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Battlestar was TV's answer to Star Wars,
Yeah.
and then Buck Rogers was like, "Oh, I have the rights for that. Let's bring back that, old serial from the 30s." And again, a couple years after George Lucas and Spielberg made back the old serials and turned it into Raiders of the Lost Ark. So there again, you talk about that like 30s to 80s. There's there's a cycle in genre, and this film is on that peak for a lot of us who, we probably had parents that watched Star Trek. We watched it with Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars, and Ice Pirates, which we've done on this show, which we love. I think some films, I know Mark Haynes, who's been on the show a few times, is dying to come back and do Runaway with Tom Selleck, and Gene Simmons as the villain with Cynthia Rhodes from Dirty Dancing as the male lead.
Where Tom Selleck fights a tiny robot that's making spaghetti.
He makes a robot it has the weight of my phone, and Tom Selleck.
It's a Roomba. He's fighting a Roomba.
It's delicious. I love it so hard. But it spits acid. Come on, let's be.
They got acid in them.
It's got acid, and he's up high, and he's afraid of heights. I mean, they set that up in the first act, right? But I think it's great. But let's wrap it up. We have a quick lightning round.
Yeah, we'll do our last two things. First is Be Bad, Be Best. We each pick a title, Tracy and I. And we'll ask you, Steve, if this is so bad, nobody should watch it, or it's so bad, it's awesome.
Okay.
All right. Be Bad or Be Best. Tracy, what do you got?
All right. My Be Bad, Be Best this week. I wanted to stick in the cult, I think, camp. Sci-fi horror. This is a 1968 French film based on a French comic book that Dino De Laurentiis had optioned and, of course, hired Roger Vadim to do. Brigitte Bardot was already done with Vadim. He was on to his next wife, the great Jane Fonda. It is the cult classic Barbarella, Psychedella.
Oh, yeah.
She's looking for Duran Duran. You Gen Xers know who she's looking for and why that band is named after this.
Fuck that band, though. I
love that band. They're too cute. I was a Simon girl. Anyway, Steve.
I got my reasons.
Girls on film. That's all I can say to you. Okay, Steven, what do you think? Barbarella.
Oh, that Barbarella's a B best, definitely.
Okay.
Barbarella's. I love Barbarella.
You want to expand? I mean, look at the poster art, guys.
I think, yeah. I mean, it's like it. I mean, it's yeah. It's just the style of it is, visually, it's just so stylistic and so, like, in a similar way to maybe Battle Beyond the Stars. Like, it embraces its absolute goofiness.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, that's what this movie is. So if you're not, it's not going to change. Tone's not going to change, friends. So get on board or you can bail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Todd, I'm sorry.
Barbarella is a B best for me.
Yeah.
I recommend, if you're a weed smoker, I would go with the sativa strain. I would go with that because it is delightfully colorful and
so
sexual.
cool.
I mean, a spaceship lined with shag carpeting.
Oh my God,
it's fantastic.
With her computer is like this wonderful gay male voice. Yeah. He wakes her up every morning and I'm like, oh my God, it's like, I want to be woken up with like an alarm clock that's not like, but like also what is amazing about this movie, and again, I think it's so cool because when Alien came out again in 1979, same year of the film we talked about tonight, obviously Sigourney Ripley changes the game. But she's still in her underwear, floating around in the third act, if we're being honest. And what passes for underwear is very slim underwear.
Yeah.
But
she's in a much smaller lady's underwear.
Smaller underwear 10 years later. It's very weird. But there's a direct line between there's Barbarella And then there's Alien, and there's not a lot of it ladies in space
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
And the idea that Barbarella was based on a very successful French comic book in its day, and that De Laurentiis is like, sexy as a girl in space, and that opening title sequence were literally, and it's so weird to me when male directors feel like they want to put their wives like in nude film, like John Derek does it with all of his wives. It's very weird to me, but here's Jane Fonda, who would go on to be, I mean, she's obviously super, accomplished actress, multiple Academy Award nominated and winning actor, producer. She's talking about 3 Mile Island before it happens, produces China Syndrome, cares about things, can do Agnes of God, does all these important movies, whatever. But she starts off doing a sex kitten role as the American, Henry Fonda's daughter, married to the French bad boy director, doing a zero gravity striptease in space, looking for Duran Duran. And this is going to tie into the next movie, where perhaps like there's a film called Poor Things. It's up for a lot of Academy Awards, where you have a character who is kind of, I would say, against her will, with no consent, turned into a monster, and then becomes a whore and thinks the better of the world. I think that's what the film's saying. I can't tell. She's a whore and she screwed a lot of really ugly guys, and it goes on for a really long time. Then she is fully formed. And here with Barbarella, there's an innocence, even though she's doing the sex kitten thing. She's Jane Fonda. There's an intelligence and a read that there's a little bit of subversiveness, because I think you have Fonda in it. And the idea that she allowed herself to play that role, talk about getting back at Daddy, who was like famous for like Grapes of Wrath, I'm Abraham Lincoln, I'm, these classic iconic characters in film. And I think she was rebelling. And then when she loses Vadim, she then becomes the political activist. She's with Tom Hayden, right? Then she kind of leaves the industry, marries Ted Turner of all things, becomes the corporate wife, does all the workout videos, which, Republican ladies, close your ears. She makes so much money, millions and millions of dollars. She uses the money from the workout videos to fund super progressive political causes. So she didn't have to work anymore as an actress, and just put all this money from the workout videos into actually trying to make the world better, interestingly enough. And then ditches Turner, and it has another act, and has now gotten back and done, Frankie and Grace and Frankie, and she still does these movies. But like, I find her fascinating. But to see early Jane Fonda in a sex kitten in space movie role, and then somehow you go from Fonda to Weaver, there's someone smarter than I could write an interesting film essay about what's going on. And somehow, in the movie we talked about tonight, you have a female lead who would go on to work with people like William Friedkin, et cetera, who also got to play a gal in space, who was a scientist. So I was trying to kind of weave a theme in, but even Roger Corman was like, yeah, we can cast her as a smart scientist. She could have been a lot of things, in this movie. And I think it's interesting. So there's always something, but I think it's a great cult film. I'm always shocked when I find people who haven't seen it. It doesn't screen a lot, so seek it out if you're younger and you haven't.
There's lots of physical media editions of Barbarella that are worth looking into, depending on what kind of player you have.
Yes.
But, yeah.
I also have to say, when my dad passed, I saved a lot of the vinyl that I liked, and I have the original soundtrack on vinyl to Barbarella, which I
that sounds
nice.
Great. That sounds great. Yeah. All right, I will give you my Be Bad, Be Best right now. And it is another Roger Corman sci-fi Star Wars ripoff.
Oh my God!
Crash of the
Hasselhoff. Star Crash. Skelton. Be bad or be best?
I gotta think. I appreciate Star Crash because it has the lightsaber ripoff. Or actually, did they manage to crank? What year was Star Crash? Was that actually just before Star Wars or just after?
It was after.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not a battle beyond the stars. I'll just say that. So I'm gonna say it's a be bad.
Oh boy. Okay. What about you, Tracy?
God, I actually forgot about this movie. I saw this movie. I feel like we recorded it off of cable or something, and we had it on VHS. So I saw it maybe multiple times.
That's probably the best way to see it is recorded from an analog signal onto
commercials breaking it up.
I actually remember liking it, but I was going through a Knight Rider phase, so I don't know if it was like I thought it was cool because Hasselhoff was being silly. I mean, I always thought he was ridiculous, but in a fun way. I remember liking this movie. Yeah, I'm gonna say be best because I remember it fondly. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. It's be best for me too, for the same nostalgic reasons. I think Skelton's right. It's not Battle Beyond the Stars.
Nothing could be.
And how do you do
Yeah, it's
that
not. Yeah,
again?
it does. Yeah, it's not paced as well. It doesn't have like
It doesn't
Battle
have
Beyond the
as
Stars really does clip along for the first half.
yeah, it
And
does. Star Crash is clunky in its pacing, but it's got a lot of those kind of moments that Battle Beyond the Stars have that make you, as a shitty movie lover, kind of laugh and have a good time. I mean, it's got and like Hasselhoff alone, his performance
Totally worth
alone
it. Always
is
worth
worth.
it. And as you can tell, the way that I'm gonna just put it back up, like I feel like the outfit, if you can call this an outfit, I feel like this is something that was probably in Battle Beyond the Stars, and Sybil's like, yeah, no, like
Yeah, I'm not wearing
so
that.
they saved it and then they put it in Star Crash.
Yeah, yeah, they made Star Crash so they can put a woman.
So they can
Like,
use
you got
the
Sybil
themes,
Danning's outfits. What are we doing?
we paid for this outfit. We got to make a movie.
We paid for this like dental floss. Let's use it.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Let's do the boost. This is where we talk about movies that maybe we think people have overlooked or don't know about or whatever that they should see, whether they're great or they're so bad they're great. Doesn't matter. That's why we boost them. Tracy, what do you got?
I have, and this is just me being me. I really did not enjoy Poor Things. It got a whole lot of nominations, and a lot of the fanboys and a lot of the things I follow online have been making this joke for weeks that Poor Things, while it's up for all these Oscars and it has very important actors like Mark Ruffalo and the great Emma Stone, who probably gets a second Oscar for this, I guess. Did I mention Glenn Close and Sigourney don't have any Oscar? Anyway, it's fine. I'm over. I'm going to die mad. But either does Annette Bening, who's also nominated in the same category for Nyad, but that's a different thing. I'm getting off target. I actually think if you want to see a grindhouse movie that is fun and I think says as much or as little as Poor Things, I think you look no further than 1999's
Henenlotter's Frankenhooker.
who
Want a
gave us
date?
Basket Case. But look at the tagline. The tagline has more wit to me than Poor Things. A terrifying tale of sluts and vaults. I feel like if you're going to just be a sexual Frankenstein monster who's a lady, and let's be honest, Universal is putting out Diablo Cody, who won the Oscar for Juno. Her new screenplay is coming out called Lisa Frankenstein out of Universal soon, and it'll be a post-feminist because, us ladies, we, again, 21 states, we don't control our bodies. So we're second-class citizens. But so perfect time for Lisa Frankenstein. I think that'll be more Diablo Cody looking at Mary Shelley, what she tried to do back in the day and did effectively and changed an entire genre of writing. I think Frankenhooker is honest. It's a grindhouse film. It's perversely funny. I somehow wasn't offended by it. I saw it in the theaters in 1990 in a midnight movie at the Port Theater in Newport Beach. I loved it. I laughed out loud. I thought it was subversive. I thought it was pretty cool. I can't say that about Poor Things, which will probably win a bunch of Oscars. So I wanted to boost this movie. And if you're old like me, you might have had a cool mom who, despite the title she wasn't fond of, she bought me the VHS cassette when it came out, which had a button on it. And if you pushed the button, it was a clamshell thing. It said, want an 8? Want an 8? Want an 8? Which is what she does. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And one of my other favorite things, and I remember this was it's on one of the one sheets, I think the rerun of the one sheets, and it was used to promote the film in the original ads at the time, 1990, so different time ago. Bill Murray, not a film critic, Bill Murray said, if you only see one film this year, it better be Frankenhooker. And I was like, that's fucking fabulous.
Do you know the story behind that?
I don't know how they got the quote, but it's on the poster.
Frank Henenlotter knew Bill Murray.
Awesome.
But they had a thing. They had like
Bill has things with everyone when he's
Bill Murray has tension with everybody, but he was passing by Bill Murray on the street in New York.
No.
And he was like, Bill. And Bill's like, like stopped, like what stopped, and was like turned around, like, what, Frank? And Frank Henenlotter was like, is there any way you would be willing to give me a quote for my new movie, Frankenhooker?
Oh my God, amazing.
And Bill Murray was like, fuck you, Frank. And turned around and walked away. And Frank was like, all right, there's that. And then Bill Murray just turned around and went, okay, Frank. And gave him the quote. Said you can use it. And then he kept walking.
Okay, but that, again, this is showmanship. This is smart marketing. This is, I'm a grindhouse. I got the guy from Caddyshack at 90 to say yes to me. Like, I love all of that, but there's something very pure. And I have friends that have issues with basket case. I mean, Todd and I both have the, Christmas tree ornament. It's my favorite Belial. But I just think there's something really special about Frankenhooker. And it's hard because I've so disliked the current film, Poor Things. And when my friends were starting, some of my film nerd friends were, oh, yeah, it's brilliant, it's amazing, it's a feminist thing. I'm like, I don't need some white guy who couldn't get the queen right in The Favorite to tell me feminine. I don't understand. But it's funny because when they talk to me about what they like about it, I'm like, have you seen Frankenhooker? And I'm going to stand by that. So I wanted to boost that tonight. And everyone who likes Poor Things, do me a favor. I sat through your Poor Things. You sit through Frankenhooker.
Yeah, that's fair. Skelton, are you a Frankenhooker fan?
Oh yeah, no, I like Frankenhooker. Frankenhooker's classic.
Yeah. I said it was funny, Tracy. Somebody posted on Facebook on my feed exactly what you were saying, comparing these two movies. And another friend of mine, she said, Frankenhooker is the only movie I've walked out of. And I decided not to respond to that because I saw Frankenhooker 5 times at the Waverly Twin Theater. It was what I did on Saturday nights. It was my Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I love that about you. It's funny because I went to go sit with Kim, who just commented, like, we saw it at the Alamo Draft House. So you're Alamo Draft House, which is my church, but sometimes there's a snob factor. And which is pretty much Yorgos. Everybody who I love him. I'm like, really? Okay. I didn't like The Lobster either. I'm just not getting it. I'm sure I'm the deficit. But we were like, this is so bad. I want to walk out. But we had dinner and we're like, well, we don't have time to go home. So like, we'll just sit through this, thinking it'll get better so we can go to dinner. Or we would have walked out. And I just was like, I can't. It's like one of those things. Like when I saw Sex, Lies, and Videotape for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, Laura San Giacomo is going to be a star. She's beautiful and wonderful and can do comedy and horror. And I care about her. And I was like, no, it's Andie MacDowell. I'm like, the one who can't act from St. Elmo's Fire? The one that Glenn Close had to dub in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan? Like, Andie MacDowell is no. And then Andie MacDowell had to run. I'm like, I'm just wrong. Because Andie MacDowell Peter Weir, like Green Card. He's like, I think I need her as a leading lady. I'm like, what about Laura San Giacomo? Did you see in this film called Sex, Lies, and Videotape where she steals I was like, so I'm wrong a lot about these things. And I know I have so many friends that are like, I love Poor Things. And
early Soderbergh is really interesting to me because he like once he got into star fucking territory with like Oceans and Contagion and everything else.
Oh,
before that,
Contagion. It opens with Gwyneth's face being ripped off. That's amazing.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I give you that. But all I'm saying is, like, he had, like, when he was an indie filmmaker early in the days, he was working with basically unknown actors. I mean, they're like in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, James Spader was probably the most.
He was the biggest star.
Yeah, and he's great in them. I love that
movie. He's wonderful. That's a great performance. He was like,
yeah, that movie blew my mind when I was in high school, and like I can still watch it and love it. And I think everybody's very good in it. And
not Andy.
No, I think Andie MacDowell's actually really good in that movie. And I think Andie MacDowell's actually also good in Shortcuts. But the thing about Soderbergh is he can pull great performances out of anybody. And that the proof of that is his early movies. Because I would say if you look at I shouldn't talk shit about actors, but here we go. Nobody's listening to this at this point. Like Andie MacDowell, Peter Gallagher, and Laura San Giacomo went on to not impress me personally in anything after Sex, Lies, and Videotape. I thought they just were. I was like, what happened? You guys were so good in that.
But Laura was somebody who, I mean, she had a big TV career with a bunch of shows that I don't watch sitcoms, but I always thought she was underused. The way I feel like a lot of actors, like sometimes you're like, why are I like Elizabeth Shue? Like she finally got one good role and gets nominated for an Oscar. I mean, every guy I grew up with was like the Babysitter movie. We love her forever. There's so much goodwill, Karate Kid, the whole thing. But like she's really talented and beautiful and looks amazing still. And I always feel like, and she has that thing, but sometimes I think, and sometimes I'm not going to say who, but sometimes I work with agents that possibly kill movies or the desire to work with certain actors ever again. And I don't think talent sometimes knows what actors do on their behalf. And I have to wonder, is that what it is? Because people like Elizabeth Shue, I think Laura with the right role. I mean, she steals every scene from Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. Reach, Bev. Well, I mean, she can do it. She just, I think something happened, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's so many actors that, well, I'm preaching to the choir with you. It's like we just need to give people the good opportunity and then do a follow-up. And sometimes there's a follow-up, and then sometimes I think things happen.
Yeah, I mean, but the Sex Lies and Videotape cast has had like so much. They've gotten so much work, and I think that's true about Elizabeth Shue. I love Elizabeth Shue.
I love Elizabeth
I
Shue.
think she's as a performer, she's very hit or miss. She's always gorgeous, and it's always fine.
She's charismatic. She can do it.
It depends on the material. You know, I mean, there are actors who elevate material regardless of what the material is. And then there are actors who are great if the material is great. I think that might be what we're talking about here, but we've gone on so long. Right. I'm just going to do this really fast.
Do it.
My Boost is one of the movies I saw on my birthday.
Oh.
And I'm really curious to see what Steve Skelton says about it when he sees it down the road. But it's ISS. It's a B movie. It got very middling reviews. Nobody went to see it. It's a January movie. I thought it was, it's 95 minutes. It's the
You've already got me interested.
I'm in.
right length for a B space movie. It is a unapologetically B space movie.
Love it.
I think it does. It's got 6 people in the cast. I think they all do a great job with the material. There's problems. I'm not saying there's not problems. I don't want you to go into this thinking it's Gravity. It's not. But it's Gravity-esque.
Okay.
And if you're willing to go with it, then it is taut and suspenseful and kind of.
I like the trailer, so I do want to see it.
Yeah, it's a great concept. And I honestly think they did.
Concept. I haven't seen the trailer. I apologize. What's the?
I don't want to give too much away. It's probably better to go into this not knowing.
Don't know anything. Okay.
But it's basically the International Space Station. You got the cosmonauts and you got the astronauts, and they're together and they're friends. And then something happens on Earth that they can see from the space station that puts them at odds with each other.
Love it. Metaphor.
It's an amazing concept, if not the most amazing movie. But I thought it was like, if you go in wanting a B space movie,
I do.
I think you'll have fun. I think you'll like. Hillary loved it. She was like, "It was taut. It was very suspenseful."
Yay!
So yeah, I would say check that out.
This is the kind of stuff we miss, though. That what you just highlighted, because we don't do enough of those anymore for theatrical, right? So it's like I have to admit I haven't heard of it. I got to run and see it.
Well, I mean, that's the problem with January movies, because
they're boosting it. That's the thing.
They dump them in the. I don't know how the legality of it all works, because now they just fucking cancel movies with Halle Berry.
Yeah, after they've shot them or they're in post.
They have them complete. Batgirl, everything's. I don't know how it works. And then there's some movies.
Smash the hard drives.
Yeah. And then there's some movies that, no, we have to release them, and we're doing it in January. I don't understand how that works. But anyway, like January movies can be genuinely awful. And then you get these fun B movies like this, I thought. And I thought The Beekeeper with Jason Statham was very fun, as we said on the last episode. There's fun stuff that comes out in January, especially for people like us.
Yeah,
like this kind of like pulpy popcorn entertainment.
It's funny. You're making such a good point, and it came up on whatever smart TV I have. Underwater, the Kristen Stewart Alien.
Oh yeah, Underwater.
And I remember seeing that in the theater because I saw the trailer, and I was like, "Oh, it's Alien. It's an Alien knockoff." I will obviously go see that. And I remembered thinking, and I don't always love Kristen Stewart, but when I like her, she's really on. And she was on in this. Like, she understood the assignment.
Yeah.
And she was doing little baby Sig things. And I was like, okay. And I remember thinking, I don't know that it came out in January. Someone can fact check me. But it was one of those films that was dumped because Disney swallowed up Fox. And this was something they had to release to get off the books. And there was not a lot of promotion. There was not a lot of niceties about it. She didn't promote it. She's like, whatever, Disney hates me, you know. And I remember thinking, well, this will clearly be bad, but because like Todd, you and I, that's how we, you know, we connected. It's like, I'm like, well, I want to see Kristen Stewart try to do a Alien knockoff, and you know, and I loved it. I
love Underwater. I agree with you. I think it's great. I mean, it brought me back to all the Abyss ripoffs that came out before the Abyss and after the Abyss, but like Deep Star 6 and all those.
Yeah.
I thought it was very fun. You know, I don't know if people should keep hiring TJ Miller or not. That's not for me to decide. Steve Skelton, thank you so much for doing the show.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on again.
So good to see you, and such a great film to bring.
Are there any things coming out that people should look for, video game wise? That you
no.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't have anything coming out either. You can see me on jury duty at the Ventura Hall of Justice.
You're gonna put the whole system on trial.
I'm putting the facts on trial. It's so funny. You know that I just watched that movie just because I was in a courtroom. I can't help it. I love True Believer. I love James Wood. And it's like James Wood and Robert Downey Jr. as liberal lawyers defending a person of color who's wrongly imprisoned.
And wasn't that the one where, isn't that the one where James Woods has a ponytail?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got
a ponytail and he smokes weed.
Yeah, I was like, what
trial. It's so good. Anyway, we'll see you next week, everybody, on My Favorite Shitty Movie. Thank you for watching, listening, and all that stuff.